This happened when I was a freshman in college and still living in my mom's house. There's a forest preserve a few miles from our house, so my mom and I decided to drive over and take the dogs for a long walk and enjoy the sunshine. The forest preserve has a path to follow for joggers, but also has a lot of open space, hills, tall grass, and trees where it's possible to go off the path and walk in a more secluded area. Still, someone has passed because there's areas where the grass is pushed down from people walking alongside the tall grass. Our dogs like to wander and aren't the friendliest dogs with other dogs, so we usually go off the main trail and try to avoid the other people. It was a nice summer day outside, and most people were sticking to the designated trail, so soon my mom and I were alone enjoying the peace and quiet. There was another man walking his large husky off the path too, but we tried to keep our distance from him because of his dog. My mom and I were talking when we heard a rustling sound a distance to the side of the path in the tall grass. I'm holding one dog and she's holding the other, and we try to pull in the retractable leashes to keep them closer, just in case there's an animal. We keep walking when one of the tall dogs lets out a growl, as there's more rustling sounds coming from the tall grass. It was a nice summer day outside, and most people were sticking to the designated trail, so soon my mom and I were alone enjoying the peace and quiet. There was another man walking his large husky off the path too, but we tried to keep our distance from him because of his dog. My mom and I were talking when we heard a rustling sound a distance to the side of the path in the tall grass. I'm holding one dog and she's holding the other, and we try to pull in the retractable leashes to keep them closer, just in case there's an animal. We keep walking when one of the tall dogs lets out a growl, as there's more rustling sounds coming from the tall grass. Needless to say, they scared the living shit out of us, and when a husky guy caught up to us, I took the dogs away to distract them while my mom talked closer to the guy. She said that he saw them sneaking into the tall grass and trying to camouflage themselves. He also told us that some unfriendly, homeless people live in the forest, and it's not the safest place to be alone as two females. My mom thanks him for getting our attention, and we run back to our car pretty quickly. We didn't report what happened, as the two guys never harmed us, but we never went back. I just have to wonder why they were camouflaged like that in public forest preserve, of all places. I'm thankful husky guys saw what they were up to, as I don't know what their intentions could have been. Number 2.
I live in a small town built in bushland, where a lot of elderly people reside, so it's safe to say that it's always been a safe neighborhood, and I've never needed to be overly cautious. This is probably why I had often been naive enough to believe that although there was a small possibility of something bad happening to me, I thought it was far too unlikely. At the time, I was 15 years old, and I used to go out on weekends to visit my boyfriend at the time, who lived quite a while away from me. I wasn't able to drive at this age, so public transport was the only means of going over to visit him. This meant walking about 20 minutes from my house to a bus stop, catching the bus into the city, and then catching a train to his house. I was used to doing this same trip every week, and I felt safe taking the trip by myself. As I was only able to see him one day during the week, I would leave early in the morning to get there and stay until fairly late before going home. Because it was late by the time I left my boyfriend's house, and the public transport was less frequent at that hour, it would be a waste of time for my boyfriend to travel any of the ways back home with me. So every week, I made the trip back home alone. On one particular night, after visiting my boyfriend, it was a usual ride on the train back into the city, and I was waiting at the bus station. The bus station is a large open building above a number of platforms on a lower story where the buses would pull in. I was waiting on the upper story on a bench in front of the stairs that led to the platform I needed for my bus home. I don't recall there being many people around, maybe 1 or 2 people passing by, but it was essentially deserted because of the late hour. One side note. Because I was visiting my boyfriend, I dressed up to look pretty for him. I was wearing a decent casual dress, I had straightened my long hair so that it looked neat, and I had just recently received some high platform boots for my birthday, which I thought looked super cool, and they were fun to wear because I didn't feel so short. I was ruffling through my bag for some gum, and I noticed someone sit down on the bench next to me. Usually when someone sits on the bench, which is already occupied, they leave a sort of one-person gap between. But this person sat down right beside me, despite there being a whole bench available. When I looked up from my bag, I saw a man who was maybe 30 years old. I'm a terrible judge of age, so I'm not really sure. I don't remember too much about his appearance. I think he was bald or had short hair. Being naive, I didn't think to try to remember any details about his appearance, which I would have done had this happened to me now. When our eyes met, he asked me something along the lines of, "Have you got any weed?" At 15, I was a good kid and didn't have anything to do with smoking or alcohol, and certainly not drugs. I told him no, and continued to sit uncomfortably on the bench waiting for the bus. Then he gestured up towards the bus schedule, above the stairs to the platform, and asked me, "Where are you heading?" As if him asking me for drugs wasn't warning sign enough for me not to tell him where I was going. I obediently told him I was catching the 123 bus to XYZ, coincidentally, he responding with, "Oh, me too." I found this to be a bit unlikely, since it was a small town where the bus was headed, but it was still possible he was actually heading this way. I started to get suspicious at this point, and I was already feeling very uncomfortable. I looked down at my phone in hopes that he wouldn't talk to me anymore. He noticed this and asked me what phone service I was with. I told him the service, and he said, "I've got a voucher for phone credit for that service, but I can't use it because I'm with a different service. Did you want it?" I'm not sure if it's the same in the US, but in Australia, where I live, we can buy prepaid credit to add call value onto our phone. I politely declined, assuming he had ill intentions, but unsure what benefit we would gain from giving me the voucher. In hindsight, maybe he was trying to get my phone number or something. I honestly don't know. He persisted. "Are you sure? Why not?" "I can't use it." But I declined again. No thank you. Things got weirder after that, when he pointed out my big platform shoes and asked, "Is it difficult to run in those shoes?" Creepy. I lied and said, "No, I can run very well in these." He could have asked if it was difficult to walk in them, but no, he didn't. He then gestured to the stairs down to the bus platform, and suggested that we go down there and wait for the bus. The platform is very poorly lit, and there was probably no one down there. I did not want to be there alone with this person, so I told him that I was going to wait here, but that he could wait down there if he wanted to. As expected, he didn't move and remained on the bench with me. A few moments later, I noticed someone walking towards us through the bus station. Against all possible odds, it happened to be someone that I recognized. It was my friend's older brother. He was probably about 17 at the time. "Ben!" I almost shouted when I saw him. He made his way over and stood in front of me on the bench. I asked him which bus he was catching, and luckily it was the same one as me. I was so relieved. We exchanged a few words back and forth, and eventually the creepy guy sitting next to me got up and wandered off. He hadn't said anything while Ben and I were talking. Ben and I went down to the platform and got on the bus when it arrived. Surprisingly, the creepy guy didn't get on the bus like he said he was. I told Ben about what happened and how he had saved me. I can't imagine what would have unfolded if Ben had not showed up when he did. I would have gone down to the platform when the bus arrived, and hopefully he would not have done anything since there was someone driving the bus, potential witness. If he had gotten as far as getting on the bus with me, I was worried about the 20-minute walk from my bus stop to my house. We were on a dark street surrounded by bush on one side, and I didn't have credit on my phone to call my mom and ask for a lift.